Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do something fun. This is the Fairy Miracles book, and I just fell in love with this picture. I just thought it was so cute. So I started working on the feathers, and I'm going to do the feathers two different ways for you today. It'll give you options on how you want to do feathers in the future. Keep in mind, these feathers did not give me much option in changing the shape. They looked more like gigantic flowers, but that's okay. We could work around that and get the best results. So here we have the feathers being done two different ways. This is a smoother feather and a more uniformed feather. And here is more of what I would want to see on the undercoat, because this owl is flaring out its feathers. Now, unfortunately, the feather is not a realistic shape for a feather, but we can do our best with it. I'm going to demonstrate both these feathers, and they're a lot easier than you might think. Now I'm going to take the color palette that I've chosen, and I'm going to start with the Sienna Brown. And for these feathers going along here, which are the easier of the two feathers to do, I'm going to just make little lines. I don't want to go in a scribble pattern going down and up. I want it lines. And since, well, this isn't an owl feather, but this is a turkey feather, a wild turkey feather. Let me see. This one's closer. See how the lines, it gets spotted in there? That's kind of like the look that we're going to go, and closer to what an owl would look like. Okay, and here, different lighting, the other side. So this is kind of like the way we're going to do it. And I'm just going with my straight lines. Now, they don't have to be perfectly straight. They're kind of like curved because of the way your hand is. And you want an up and down pattern. And that's just first layer on there. Now I'm going to switch to a little darker color. We're going to go back and forth with the colors. And I'm going to get out, let's see, where's my... Okay, here's my dark brown. And I'm going to go and get some more of these lines going in. Same as you would see on this feather. Right over here, you have little lines going in there. That's what I'm going to have going in mine also. I'm leaving space open for the lighter color. And as you can see, I left it on here. These are not completely done. I want to sort of get the whole thing done before I do a top layer or a final layer. I want to see how my lighting is going. Okay. I'm going to use my Canary Yellow, and over here, because of where the light is hitting it, I'm going to just keep an open space for something bright. That will get covered up later on. And then I'm going to switch my color over again. Let's see what I have here. Okay. Now, I know we've talked about the grays. I'm using a cool gray. Even though it's a brown, it did kind of go. Sometimes it works that way. Rules in art are not steadfast. You know, you could break a rule. And I'm just putting in some of my darker areas using it. Getting that spotted look. And I'm going to very lightly shade over, because this whole area is going to be the darker side of the feather. Okay? And we're going to go from darker up until lighter as the light hits it. So you're going to see less and less detail over here and more detail over here. Keep switching out my colors. With less and less of the white towards the body and more of the lighter color, which is actually cream, not white. Yeah. You want a sharper pencil to do this. I'm back to my Sienna Brown. I'm going to keep more and more open layers for lighter colors as it spreads. Now, as I'm overlapping the feathers, this one is over this one, this one is over this one. I'm going to make sure there's a shadow mark so that you can see the feathers starting to lay on top of each other. Okay, and now that's where my shadow is. Now I'm going to sort of darken it up, the general color down here. Whenever you want to go lighter with your pencil, you move to the back of the pencil. Makes it much easier. I'm going very light with a very light touch. I'm going to go back to my Sienna. Now don't do too much work on each one of these feathers, because each one of these feathers is going to set the tone for going around. So you don't want to do your final feather without seeing what over here is going to look like, and what over here is going to look like, and over here is going to look like. You sort of want to build from the bottom going upward. Just keep in mind, these feathers are going to be much lighter, so don't put in too much work on them at this point. Okay. And you get the picture of it going up. I'm going to finish the bottom work on this one, and we'll come back to this side. On this side, I wanted to show you what I've been doing. Now, I wanted this side being a little smooth because this is the bottom side of the feather, and because I have birds, I know it's a little lighter and fluffier underneath, where the over part of the birds, I don't know feather anatomy, but it's a sleeker look. So I'm using a darker feather here. I really developed out these, but let me show you what I did to get it to that point. I divided the feathers up into pieces, light, and then some stripes. This is just the bottom of it, to give the bottom, like, so that if you're looking through the feather, you'll see various shades on it. And the colors that I used were cream, goldenrod, dark brown. Your feathers on a bird are all different. They have like sort of different patterns, even though they're almost the same. Now, if I was doing a realistic feather, you see how I added in some dark at the edges here? I went up and into the feather. That's to try to simulate when the feather splits. Really, you always have a feather that splits somewhere. So going in a little bit with the darkest color, I'm using dark green, but you can use the dark gray. That works too. Anything that's darker, the real color over the brown is not going to show up. So don't panic if you pick up the wrong pencil. Or the only color I wouldn't really use is black yet. I did use black in here and just split some of the feather marks so it's not as solid. Here I'm going to take a dark brown, start off with my dark brown. And I'm going to go downward, just like the feather goes, where the quills are going in a V shape. And because I'm taking the dark over the light, I'm going to get different hues and patterns in the feather, as you could see if you look closely on here. And it just makes it easier. Keep your pencil sharp and sort of use a tapered stroke. And now we're going to go on this side. And I'm going to do it again on here, keeping my quills going in the same direction. Okay, then you can get out another color. Let's see what I have here. We'll go with the burnt ochre. And I'm going to get some of that reddish in there. Because all of this is on there, it's going to come out with a different pattern, as you can already tell that's developing. And by varying up your colors so that it's darker to lighter will be how you get your light coming into the picture. So I'm going to finish this up and I'll let you see what I did at the end. I didn't want to get too far ahead without checking in and letting you see the progress. For this wing, I've stuck to these basic 5 colors. The Sienna Brown, dark brown, cream, 90% cool gray, and Goldenrod. I've reserved 2 pencils for getting more color in the later stages, and that's going to be Tuscan Red and Canary Yellow. The Canary Yellow will give it a brightness where it needs it, and the red will tone it down. So that's where I'm at. I just kept going, taking pencil after pencil. Try to avoid coloring or doing anything circular on it. Leave your strokes as little lines. It will fill in. It takes a long time. If an area looks too yellow, add a brown. If it's too dark, add your goldenrod. And eventually it's going to start looking very thick and rich. And as I said, that just involves time and patience. Getting your different hues until you're satisfied with what it looks like. Once you're happy, like I'm just about happy with what this is, I'm going to go to my goldenrods. Not my goldenrods. I'm going to go to my Canary Yellow, and I'm going to look where my highlighted areas are, and then maybe brighten them up. And see, by leaving that hue open and having not used it, I'll be able to get little spots of light. If you really need to lighten something up, remember you can always go to your electric pencil eraser. Another thing you can do to increase the richness in the picture is to use your eraser. You make teeny tiny lines over the areas that you've colored in heavy, and what that does is lift and stain so that there's color underneath, but you can now take another color, put it on top, and create finer lines that will seemingly be on top, where the other lines will go richly to the bottom and cause thickness. The last color I'm going to use, I haven't touched this paper with a black pencil. That's my last. That's the ultimate hue or darkness that I can possibly put on this paper. So that's why I want to use it sparingly and at the end. And this is when I can go in and add the fine details into the feather. Push back the color. I'm using a very sharp pencil. The sharper the better, because you'll get the final line. If you have Verathins work really good for this. That's a harder wax and will give you a thinner line. But at this point, I'm just adding the fine lines. It's not going to be any major changing on the picture. When I'm happy with the wing and I've got my highlights where I want them to be, with the yellows and the golds and my dark areas, that's when I will call this wing and say, finished. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take the black pencil And I'm going to go into these little arrowed areas and make sure they're nice and shaded. At this point, I'm using the black and not the dark gray because really I've taken the dark gray as far as I could take it. And because I saved the black for the end, it gives me another bump up level of how to bring these things out. Now, the more I use this black to define the feathers, the more three-dimensional the feathers are becoming. You see, very small amount of work, and they're really starting to pop off the bird. Another thing I'm going to do with the black pencil is I'm going to define the vein in the feather. And if you look on this feather, it tapers, so it's a little bit fatter, and then it goes to a thinner point. So I'm going to make it a little fatter at this end, and then just taper it. And because I left that black for the end, that color will stand out. I'm laying the ground color for the next wing. I used a lot of the yellow, Canary Yellow, on it because this is going to be my highlighted area. I'm thinking of having the light coming in so that it hits the underside of this wing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave the wing alone because remember I was everybody the seesaw effect? Well, on here, I want to see what the colors over here and on the body look like before I determine where my brightest areas are and how bright I'm going to go and how dark I'm going to go. So that's where I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to start working on the face and the body. I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.